Part 56. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 553. According to usual work habits and plans, Yoshida originally did not need to come to Takahashi Makoto's house today, but to go to the Little Sea Otter to keep an eye on the cartoonist who recently suffered from lazy cancer. But considering that Takahashi had previously, there was a weird smile on Cheng's face when he mentioned special benefits. After tossing and turning in fear all night, a certain editor decided to come to the house again today to inquire about the news. Terribly sorry. Just when Yoshida was about to knock on the door, he heard a familiar voice coming from the room. It only took him a second to react, and Yoshida judged that the person who just apologized sincerely was none other than manga artist Shizukawa, who once worked as an assistant to Makoto Takahashi, is currently dual serializing in monthly and weekly magazines. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Listening to Jinghee's sincere apology in the room, he stopped knocking on the door and began to think about Jinghee's purpose. Even if cartoonists have a good relationship with each other, unless something major happens, they rarely visit each other. After all, it is not an easy task to create and complete comic manuscripts required for serialization every week or every month. At least some cartoonists are unable to persist in this kind of work that does not sound difficult but is extremely difficult to practice. And had to end the comics that he regarded as a child early. Of course, cartoonists like Little Sea Otter who suffer from escapism, or cheating visitors from another world like Takahashi Makoto, or even genius-level existences like Eiji Arizuma, are not. It can only be restricted by common sense. Little Sea Otter often goes to other colleagues on the cartoonist side to practice escape from the madman Yoshida. Makoto Takahashi often goes to other cartoonist colleagues to improve the skills of Master of Ridicule, and Eiji Niizuma, although he is listed as a cartoonist who transcends common sense, but in fact, he only appeared because he was summoned by a middle-class cartoonist at most. Huh? The door is not closed today. Yoshida, who originally planned to knock on the door, found that the door was ajar, and a happy smile appeared on his face instantly. Then, excuse me. You must know that every time after knocking on the door, a certain middle school cartoonist always has the habit of having some embarrassing questions and answers with the person who knocks on the door. If you don't follow these rules when entering, what will be waiting for you? A cruel and tragic battle. So Yoshida, who found that the door was not closed, did not knock on the door but chose to enter directly. Because of my immature behavior, I have brought you a lot of trouble, master. Jinghee was kneeling in front of Takahashi Makoto and bowed to apologize. Although someone came in, making Jinghee, who was apologizing, a little embarrassed, he stopped what he had not finished saying, but when Jinghee saw that the person coming was Yoshida, he hesitated for a moment and continued to say sincerely, "Anyway, I am really sorry for what happened this time. I mean Lyoze, since you..." Before Takahashi Makoto finished speaking, he was forcefully interrupted by Yoshida. "Shizukawa-kun, since you have come to apologize in person, you must also know the seriousness of the consequences of this message, right?" In response to Shizukawa's sincere apology, Yoshida, who is the editor-in-chief of the manga artist Hohoin Koshin, said, "I can accept it intellectually but cannot let go emotionally." Therefore, before Takahashi Makoto replied to Jinghee, Yoshida said in a serious tone, "You who serialized the comic Assassination in the weekly magazine must also know the agreement reached between Makoto and the editor-in-chief, right? If it is because of Jinghee-jun, your behavior this time has affected Aiken, causing the performance of Aiken's comic strips to drop to the condition of being cut in half, you..." Oh, my beloved cat, you are really strict. According to the gangster logic of a certain middle-class cartoonist who once had his head stolen, Takahashi Makoto, who had just been robbed by Yoshida, now the counterattack decisively begins. But you are just an editor-in-chief with a sinister tongue. When did you master the heart-rending and cruel skill of awe-inspiring preaching? Hey, Chen, I'm just trying to help you. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi depressedly, and said in a bad tone, don't forget the agreement you made with the editor-in-chief before. If you don't find a solution next, clarifying Jing He-kun's message will most likely result in your manga being cut in half. The reason Shizukawa came to Takahashi Makoto to plead guilty today was because his assistant, Miss Aoi Ueno, strongly requested it. Shizukawa, who was neither good at words nor sociable, realized the seriousness of the problem after listening to Miss Aoi Ueno's analysis, so he came to Makoto Takahashi early in the morning to apologize. Master's comics will be cut in half. However, when Jing He heard Yoshida say the serious consequences, his face became very ugly. He clenched his fists tightly and lowered his head with guilt, not daring to look up at Makoto Takahashi. To be honest, the reason why Jing He published such a message in the monthly magazine was because he had no idea of diversion of trouble to the east. Shizuka just wants to be recognized by Makoto Takahashi, who recognizes that he is no longer an assistant but a cartoonist. He just wants to prove to his master that he is fully capable of being a cartoonist and interact with the people he admires and admires. Cartoonist Hohoin Kuma stood on the same stage. Shizukawa never thought that because of his remarks, his master, the manga artist Hohoin Kuma, would be brought far beyond his own. Imagine the trouble. Master, regardless of guilt or self-blame, now Jing He feels that all he can do is to apologize, right? So what? Makoto Takahashi looked up at Yoshida, waved his hand to stop Shizuka, who wanted to apologize again, and asked Yoshida word by word, my beloved cat, it seems you are still. I don't understand the key to comic serialization. Chen, if you have something to say, just say it. Seeing Takahashi Cheng's inscrutable expression, Yoshida twitched the corner of his mouth and said this while holding back his anger. As long as comics are interesting, they can be serialized. As long as they are interesting, they will be favored by readers. Rather than analyzing it to Yoshida, Takahashi Makoto is more likely to be comforting Shizukawa, who is in a state of self-blame and guilt. This has nothing to do with who the cartoonist is, and it also has nothing to do with the character of the cartoonist. To put it simply, my beloved cat, when you eat eggs, do you think about the hen that laid the eggs? This. Although Takahashi Makoto's words made sense, Yoshida always felt that something was not quite right. So Ryoko, whether you blame yourself or feel guilty, there is actually no need for you to think about this at all. Ignoring Yoshida, who was struggling beside him, Takahashi Makoto slowly walked up to Shizuo. He raised his hand and patted her gently. Patting Jing He on the shoulder, hey, Liuzi, raise your head and answer me. You, Jing He, are a cartoonist, right? Yes, yes. After struggling and hesitating for a moment, Jing He raised his head and looked at Makoto Takahashi. After pondering for a moment, he said in a stuttering but firm tone, I am a cartoonist. Very good. Then Liuzi, let me ask you again. Makoto Takahashi's tone began to change, and his volume increased a lot. We are cartoonists. We are cartoonists, and we can also call ourselves gods. This kind of weird question and answer method, should I say that Jing He was once the assistant of a middle school cartoonist? Of course. We are gods, we should control the entire world, neither interfered by the outside world nor misled by weakness. We are gods, we should stand the wine in the clouds, sit back and watch human beings struggling and wandering like ants. We are gods, and we should be at the top of the world, relying on our will to guide the development and evolution of mankind. A certain second-grade cartoonist became more and more excited and fanatical as he spoke, which made the person on the sidelines from just now, Editor-in-Chief Yoshida, who started to watch, was under a lot of pressure. Since we are gods, why should we surrender to weak will? Why should we feel guilty and blame ourselves? Why should we apologize and ask for forgiveness? But Master, this time momentum, This kind of existence that can be felt but cannot be observed, originally only appeared in novels or comics. Shizuka felt it in Takahashi Makoto today. Ruko, you don't need to apologize at all, although I have wanted to say this a long time ago. There are always some troublemakers who come out to cause trouble. Makoto Takahashi glanced at the speechless Yoshida with an unkind look. Then he continued to say to Jinghihi, since everyone on the reader side is so excited because of the plot of your comics, it means that your comics are very interesting and attractive. The deep love and deep responsibility are precisely because of the comics. The plot resonates with the reader's emotions, which is why this situation occurs. Teacher, master. So no matter whether you are a disciple or an opponent, you are able to draw such a plot. Makoto Takahashi gave a thumbs up to Jinghi River and smiled happily. Let me praise you, you are worthy of being a cartoonist. Jinghi River. Listening to these 20-footed words, and looking at Makoto Takahashi, who was so moved by Shizugawa in just a few words, Yoshida suddenly felt that the worldview he had established was collapsing at an extremely fast speed. Yeah, the result is better than expected. Standing by the window and watching Shizu slowly leaving, Makoto Takahashi ignored Yoshida and nodded while talking to himself. Ryu, the mentality of Lyozi at this moment is very consistent with assassination. In this way, after finishing Jean, Lyozi can draw assassination. In other words, this shouldn't be considered cheating, right? Cheating. Chen, do you mean? Listening to Takahashi Makoto's words, the expression on Yoshida's face became, ahem, it's hard to describe in words. Huh? My beloved cat, I thought you knew it a long time ago. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida in surprise. Obviously, all of this is my fault, ahem, all of this is, the choice of Steins Gate. You just wanted to say that everything was arranged by you, right? Your slip of the tongue just now has completely exposed your conspirator nature. Takahashi Makoto. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Mal. Chapter 554. Although Yoshida smelled a conspiracy from the exciting slip of the tongue of a certain middle-class cartoonist, Takahashi Makoto pretended to be stupid, but even so, a certain editor who had been persecuted by a certain middle-class cartoonist for many years, the idea of Takahashi Makoto conspiracy theory has already been deeply imprinted in my mind. Originally, Yoshida thought that the cartoonists Shizukawa and Makoto Takahashi, who were the protagonists of this incident and the trigger, should have some inside information, but it is a pity that no matter how Yoshida inquired about Makoto Takahashi, or he secretly told them many times, I contacted cartoonist Jinghihi, but still could not obtain accurate and valuable information. Since the information you want to know cannot be obtained through direct methods, then let's use the curved method of secretly crossing Chen Kang. After many failed attempts to inquire, Yoshida finally made up his mind to find another way to obtain information from Takahashi Makoto. And, that's not the only thing that worries Yoshida. Makoto Takahashi once said before that he would give readers a special benefit called God's unfolding plot in the comics. This made Yoshida worried for a long time, but during this time, Makoto Takahashi said the completed comic series manuscripts, whether it is One Punch Man in the weekly, or White Rabbit Candy in the monthly, or Railgun jointly completed with A.G. Shinzuma under the name Makoto Shinkai, are all there is no plot worth paying attention to. God unfolds. HN, what kind of crazy plan are you planning? My beloved cat, you have such crazy plans, you think too much. Faced with Yoshida's probing questions, Makoto Takahashi, who was drawing the manga, paused for a moment with his hand holding the brush. With a joyful smile that made Yoshida horrified, and said slowly in a calm tone, the reason why I thought of issuing special benefits is just because I found something that makes me pleasant. Things that make you pleasant, hey, are you thinking too much about this? Yoshida suddenly made a long face. Chang, what you call pleasant things can still be considered a trivial matter. Don't talk about such horrible things with a calm face. Tell me honestly, What did you find? Well, I discovered something interesting. As if feeling Yoshida's dissatisfied look, Takahashi Makoto pondered for a moment, then added, "It's also something that makes me pleasant." Don't use this roundabout question and answer method to change the subject, Hunden. Eh? This means that you, my cat, want to communicate with me on an equal footing. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida in surprise and asked in a confused tone, "My cat, are you sure, with your current wisdom, can you really understand what I'm going to say next? If it's normal communication." Yoshida, who was gritting his teeth just now, became a little hesitant, being able to understand the thoughts of the crazy manga artist and keep up with the rhythm of the conversation. Yoshida said that he was really not that confident. Sure enough, every person who has the attribute of black belly and poisonous tongue who looks like a slut is actually a slut who is full of anger on the inside. Because I have something to do later, so I'll keep the story short. Makoto Takahashi suddenly looked up at the clock on the wall. After hesitating for a moment, he continued to say to Yoshida, "Previously, the former commander Zeng Jin proposed a very interesting theory. Do you remember, my cat?" "Former commander-in-chief, do you mean former editor-in-chief Sasaki-sama?" It's obvious that Yoshida has begun to lose track of the rhythm, but it's good to be able to remember editor-in-chief Sasaki, Yoshida-kun. Interesting theory is. The character of the cartoonist will affect the style of the cartoon and the plot direction of the cartoon. To put it simply, the cartoonist's inspiration for creating cartoons comes from the reflection of his own inner world. I saw Yoshida frowning and thinking again. After the meeting, he nodded in agreement. A fox-like smile appeared on Makoto Takahashi's face. Different cartoonists will create different cartoons, and even if two cartoonists draw cartoons with the same theme, their differences will be different due to personal differences. Different comics are created based on the characteristics of one's own character. In other words, I prefer to call this phenomenon the composition of inherent barrier. The composition of inherent barrier. Yoshida frowned again. Things that were initially somewhat understandable became complicated in an instant after a middle-grade cartoonist added words that were not in his vocabulary. Comics are the inherent boundary of the cartoonist, which is to embody one's mental landscape on the manuscript paper. Once the cartoon is created, the humans or other creatures imagined by the cartoonist, and even the entire world itself, are the cartoonists the embodiment of the mental landscape. The cartoonist is not only the master of the inherent barrier, but also the creator of the world, or, call it a god. Makoto Takahashi stood up and came to the bookshelf, pulling out a few issues from the bookshelf. The published weekly Shounen Jump was placed in front of Yoshida, and Yoshida continued, whose thoughts were already confused, and said, "The readers who observe the comics are the time travelers who have mistakenly entered the inherent barrier of the cartoonists. Readers, everything I see, observe, and feel is just the embodiment of the cartoonist's inner scenery, whether it is a plot that makes people cry or a battle that makes people excited. All of this has been arranged and destined. To put it simply, when readers observe comics, their inner world has been unknowingly created by the cartoonist. The barrier is invaded and corroded." "Is this the interesting thing you said, Cheng?" Under the pause of a middle-class cartoonist well-intentioned /U0026 well-intentioned, Yoshida spent a lot of time to sort out this sudden information shock. "Of course not. Speaking of my beloved cat, I didn't expect your thoughts to be so superficial. I'm sorry, I overestimated your IQ." Makoto Takahashi said this without any apology. I apologized sincerely, but seeing Yoshida about to go berserk, Makoto Takahashi was worried that he would not be able to find a replacement toy in the short term after destroying a certain editor in charge, so he decisively chose to continue what he had just said to change the subject. When cartoonists construct inherent boundaries, they will more or less be affected by their mentality in reality. When embodying the scenery that belongs to their own minds, they will embody their most ardent expectations or what they want most. Realized dreams are integrated into it, Being able to get a glimpse of other cartoonists' expectations and dreams through observing comics is a really interesting idea for me. To be able to have such an idea, Chen, you are really, should I say that you are worthy of the arrogant cartoonist Phoenix Academy, damn it. Is this the idea of peeping at the Demon King Makoto Takahashi? It's really weird, as the editor-in-chief, Yoshida has naturally mastered the advanced conversational skill of inconsistent words. By the way, my familiar cat, why is that disbelieving expression on your face? But please don't forget that Makoto Takahashi is a middle-class manga artist who has mastered the art of mind reading. Humph. In that case, I will use some of my fellow cartoonists as examples to explain to you in detail. Just when Takahashi Makoto was about to further replace unusual common sense with common sense in Yoshida's mind, he felt someone tugging at his white coat. "Father, it's time to set off." Takahashi Makoto's son Ogata CG pulled Takahashi Makoto's white coat with a stern expression. "Since we have made an appointment with others, we shouldn't be late." "Yeah, you're right, CG." Takahashi Makoto first rubbed CG's little head, then picked up Ogata CG, who still had no expression at all, and said to Yoshida, "My dependent's cat, how about we continue the topic tomorrow? Next, I want to go out with Jinkai." Okay, Yoshida, who had never thought that Takahashi Makoto would be a qualified father, was so surprised when he suddenly saw Takahashi Makoto's appearance as a good father who left work to accompany his children. My brain shut down for several seconds. However, after Yoshida reacted, his face immediately changed to a smile of "Uncle, I am a good person," and he smiled and asked Ogata CG in Takahashi Makoto's arms, "CG-chan, I have a date with my friend later, would you like to go to the amusement park together?" "No," Ogata CG tilted his head and looked at the smiling Yoshida. After thinking for a moment, he said slowly in a childish voice, "Father said that he will take me to brush a certain yellow-haired glasses later. A copy of Jun's Go game." Eh? What? Yoshida almost bit his tongue when he heard Ogata CG's words. "I take back my preamble, Takahashi Makoto is really not a good father." Looking at Takahashi Makoto's back holding Ogata CG and walking away, Yoshida thought this. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao SD Mao. Chapter 555. Chapter 555, it seems that Takahashi Makoto will take the blame again. The chess pieces made a crisp sound when they fell on the chessboard, but the two players showed completely different expressions, and Ogata CG, who was kneeling and watching the game, did not make noises like other naughty children of the same age, but stared at the chessboard very honestly and quietly. Takahashi Makoto made his moves very quickly, as if he didn't need to think at all, but the yellow-haired man with glasses was just the opposite. Every time he picked up a chess piece, he would frown and think for a while before carefully placing the chess piece on the chessboard. "CG, who will win, can you tell it now?" Takahashi Makoto suddenly asked after placing a move. "It should be very clear now." "Yes, father will win." Ogata CG still stared expectantly, and after hesitating for a moment, he whispered, "The strength of both sides, the gap is too big. I admit defeat." "Thank you for your advice." Although a certain yellow-haired man wanted to hold on, he decided to surrender instantly after hearing the sigh of the little boy Ogata CG. Even a child who has learned Go for a while can clearly see the difference between the winner and the loser and the difference between the two sides. The yellow-haired man with glasses is not thick-skinned enough to pretend to be ignorant. "CG, the next game is up to you." Takahashi Makoto stood up and exchanged positions with Ogata CG, then while collecting the chess pieces, he slowly said, "Defeat the yellow-haired glasses man under the condition of mutual advance. This is the test you need to complete today." "Yes, father." Ogata CG bowed to the yellow-haired glasses man, then grabbed a handful of black pieces and placed them on the chessboard. "Uncle Takagi, please give me more advice. Please, please give me more advice." Such a polite little guy, is he really the son of Takahashi Makoto? Looking at Ogata Seiji strangely, the yellow-haired glasses man hesitated for a moment, but still held back from complaining to Takahashi Makoto. I admit defeat." Although he felt a little depressed about losing to a child, the yellow-haired man still had a sense of integrity. After finding that he was doomed, he decisively admitted defeat in the middle game. However, now a certain yellow-haired man with glasses can be sure that the little boy sitting opposite him and playing chess with him is definitely the offspring of Makoto Takahashi, for sure. Because the way the little boy Seiji Ogata plays chess is not as aggressive as Makoto Takahashi, which makes him unable to defend at all. Instead, he keeps digging traps and laying out his plans from the beginning, and what makes him even more speechless is that the expressionless little boy in front of him will deliberately create some seemingly flawed chess moves, and then lead himself to a dead end little by little. Although the essence of Go is to calculate each other, find the opponent's flaws between mistakes, and then give a fatal blow, but the way the little boy Seiji Ogata plays chess is obviously the same as the character of a certain middle school cartoonist, which is quite dark and bad. "Seiji, although you won this game, it was a very lucky win." Makoto Takahashi did not start to comment on the game as he had done, but scolded the little boy Seiji Ogata who had just won. "Although the opponent is not on the same level as you in terms of strength or intelligence, but I remember that I once taught you that no matter what kind of opponent you face, once you have established a hostile relationship, you should directly destroy the opponent to pieces, right?" "Yes, father." Ogata Seiji still had no expression on his face. No, a trace of unwillingness flashed in the little boy's eyes. After hesitating for a moment, he still opened his mouth to explain to Takahashi Makoto, "But father, it is precisely because the opponent is weak that I use it to practice immature moves." "Huh? Seiji, let me tell you, many villains behind the scenes are self-proclaimed justice because they do things like you." Partner's protagonist side defeated him. Takahashi Makoto was not angry at Ogata Seiji's explanation, but continued to carry out the elite education of the crazy Demon King righteously. "As the son of the Demon King, you must remember the lesson of don't commit suicide or you won't die. Take the chess game you just played for example. Seiji, do you really think you won easily? Isn't it?" Although Uncle Takagi is the original author of the manga Hikaru no Go, his own Go level, it seems that he noticed the embarrassed expression of a certain yellow-haired man with glasses, and the very sensible little boy Ogata Seiji did not finish his words, but the meaning he wanted to express was already very clear. Puff. "Akito, you are really tragic. Ahahahaha." Landai, who was laughing secretly with his mouth covered, didn't care about the embarrassment of his good friend and continued to add insult to injury. As for the yellow-haired man with glasses, in addition to making an awkward laugh, he also confirmed again that the three-no little boy opposite him was definitely the offspring of a certain middle school cartoonist Takahashi Makoto, for sure. "Seiji, you should observe the chess game carefully. If your uncle just made this move." Takahashi Makoto picked up a white piece and put it on the chessboard, then pointed at a large area of black pieces and said to Ogata Seiji, "Seiji, all the black pieces in your area will be surrounded and killed, and the white pieces will also take the opportunity to connect together. In this way, the final victory or defeat, humph." If Uncle Takagi really noticed that move, I should have lost in the end. After quickly calculating the next move in his mind, Ogata Seiji was silent for a moment before speaking. Let's not mention how Hashi Makoto took this opportunity to educate his son Ogata Seiji. After hearing Takahashi Makoto's explanation, the man with yellow-haired glasses suddenly fell into a state of deep thought. It was not that he was recalling the previous game, but he wanted to take advantage of it. This is not to improve his Go level, but because of what Makoto Takahashi said just now. The yellow-haired glasses man suddenly thought of his own comic Go soul. According to the setting in the comic Soul of Chess, Zhou Wei's obsession is to understand God's hand. However, regarding the setting of this God's hand, Mr. Huang Mao and Glasses have discussed it many times with his good friend Lan Dai, but they have never been able to reach a consensus. In other words, no matter how they conceive, they can't create a setting that convinces you. But now, or just now, when Takahashi Makoto was educating his child Ogata Seiji, a casual explanation made a certain yellow-haired Glasses man burst into inspiration. Arrange a duel between Zhou Wei and Teyaren, and let the protagonist Shindo Hikaru watch the battle. Then when Zhou Wei won with a slight advantage, Xiaoguang pointed out that the two people who had just faced off had ignored a chess move that could reverse the advantages and disadvantages, and even determine victory or defeat. This is a move that can determine the outcome of the two top Go masters. However, the two top Go masters did not notice it. Instead, Xiaoguang, who was watching the game, noticed, this move surpassed the top Go masters. Isn't it? Is it the hand of God that I and my gay friends have been thinking about for a long time? And this can also explain why Zhou Wei chose Xiaoguang. Because it was precisely for Xiaoguang to witness this chess game and the emergence of this God's hand that the encounter between Zhou Wei and Xiaoguang happened. Father, our Uncle Takagi, okay, looking at the man with yellow-haired glasses who woke up from his meditative state and began to sit at the table and write hard, Ogata Seiji looked at his father Takahashi Makoto with some uneasiness. Probably because I couldn't stand losing to you, Seiji, so I went crazy. Makoto Takahashi gently rubbed his child's head and sighed helplessly, such an immature mind is really pitiful. Uncle Mashiro, is this my fault? Ogata Seiji opened his eyes wide and asked Lan Dai, whose mouth corners were twitching. No, everything is Tokiomi's fault, Takahashi Makoto, is this consolation? I'm talking about Cheng, you and your son. The man with yellow-haired glasses, who had already recorded the inspiration he had just had, complained with a twitching corner of his mouth after hearing the conversation between Cheng Takahashi and his son, my mentality, you're not that fragile. Ah, forget it, I just suddenly thought of some comic plots, anyway, I really want to thank you this time. The plot of the comic. Upon hearing this, classmate Lan Dai showed a surprised look on his face, looking at his good friend in disbelief. Hey, Kairan, could what you said be the same as before? That setting of God's hand that we've been struggling with, right? Yeah, that's right, the yellow-haired glasses man pushed up his glasses, with an excited look on his face, and turned to look at Takahashi Makoto and his son. This time I was able to come up with something about God's hand. The plot is really thanks to Cheng and Seiji-chan. What the hell? Hand of God. Takahashi Cheng was even more surprised than Lan Dai when he heard this. His eyes looking at the yellow-haired glasses man instantly became extremely weird, and he asked in an uncertain tone, I said Huang, Mr. Mao Jiajian, could you tell what happened just now? I haven't said anything yet, Cheng, you have already guessed it. Mr. Huang-haired glasses nodded calmly and admitted, that's right, I just used what happened just now in God's world in the plot of Yishao. Then the next plot of the manga is that because Xiao Ei truly understands God's hand, his obsession dissipates and finally disappears. Although Takahashi Makoto still harbors a trace of fantasy, the yellow-haired glasses man is full of surprise. The look of affirmation was enough to completely shatter this fantasy. Cheng, you are really amazing. Just based on this little bit of information, you can guess the plot direction of our comic. Should we say that you are worthy of being the cartoonist Phoenix Institute fierce master? The yellow-haired glasses gentleman really did this time. I was shocked. But don't worry, Cheng, we will not forget your contribution. When this chapter is serialized in the future, we will issue a statement in the weekly to tell readers the origin of this part of the plot. F***CK. Mr. Huang-haired glasses, are you trying to blame me? Just imagining how much resentment the readers will have for Zhou Wei's disappearance makes Takahashi shudder. If the yellow-haired glasses man really makes such a statement, Takahashi Makoto feels that although he can get a lot of pleasure, but equally, it will definitely be criticized to death by readers. HN, what you said. The yellow-haired glasses guy didn't seem to realize the serious consequences of this plot. Instead, he said to Takahashi Makoto quite sincerely, if it weren't for the fact that you brought CG-chan to have sex with me, I probably couldn't have imagined this plot. I'm so grateful. Tisk, this is all just a coincidence. Accidental. Mr. Huang-haired glasses, let me tell you. Hey, father, young Shota Ogata CG pulled Takahashi Makoto's white coat. Didn't you say that there are no accidents in this world, but only necessity? But CG, look at the process of your uncle with yellow hair and glasses creating the plot of the comics this time. Isn't it a coincidence? Uncle Takagi came up with the plot of the comics, according to what father usually says. The little boy CG Ogata looked up at Takahashi Makoto and made a great finishing move. All of this is the choice of Steins Gate. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 556. Although Yoshida was very anxious at first about the incident caused by the cartoonist Jinghe River, since Takahashi Makoto had already expressed his attitude, Yoshida naturally didn't say much, but the special benefits and the attitude of looking forward to pleasure that Takahashi Makoto mentioned before made Yoshida a little worried. During this period, after receiving the comic manuscripts submitted by Takahashi Makoto, Yoshida carefully observed them at least 3 times, and only after confirming that they were correct would he hand them over to the logistics team on the editorial side. After the sample issue of the weekly or monthly magazine where the comics were published was produced, Yoshida would always check the serialized comics belonging to Takahashi Makoto again as soon as possible. Because Yoshida, the conscientious editor-in-chief, would worry that a certain Chuyuni cartoonist who did not play by the rules would use the action and execution power beyond the understanding of normal people to exchange the comic manuscripts in the middle, so don't say that Yoshida is suspicious or has persecution delusions. After all, a certain Chuyuni cartoonist had really done such a cruel and crazy incident. According to the agreement with Makoto Takahashi, Yoshida came to Makoto Takahashi's house early this morning. Now, I will bear all the curses, in the future, I will definitely bear all the resentment. Makoto Takahashi was tidying up his white coat in front of the mirror, and he sighed inexplicably, how Erhoin Kyoma, oh how Erhoin Kyoma, you are really a sinful demon king. Listening to the narcissistic sigh of a certain middle school cartoonist, the editor in charge who was sitting on the sofa and was about to speak instantly lost the idea of communicating with the other party. My beloved cat, you actually appeared in the barrier without my knowledge. Well, it seems that you have been very diligent in practicing the skill of stalking recently. Takahashi Makoto took out a stack of previously published weekly magazines from the bookshelf and placed them on the table in front of Yoshida with a smile on his face. Then, my beloved cat, have you understood the rules? Rules? Yoshida frowned, looked at the previous issues of the weekly magazines in front of him, and then looked at Takahashi Makoto who was folding his arms in front of his chest, and asked with a puzzled face, what rules? Ah-Chen, aren't you going to explain it to me in detail today? Are there any matters related to special benefits? Huh? My dear cat, you haven't completely forgotten it, have you? Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida's confused face, sighed helplessly, and said helplessly, of course it's the rule of equivalent exchange. Since, my dear cat, you intend to have an equal exchange with me, you must first show your sincerity. Sincerity for equal exchange. Communicating with a Chuyunibu manga artist is indeed an ultimate task with a difficulty of maddening. At this moment, Yoshida's heart is broken. Don't you even know how to show your sincerity? My cat, you are just a stupid human being. Makoto Takahashi sighed as he sat on the sofa opposite Yoshida, pointed at the weekly magazine on the table, and said in a tone of regret, it's to let you observe the inherent barrier of your colleagues on the cartoonist side, and then talk about your feelings and mental journey. In short, The situation is basically like this. Ah Cheng, do you mean that you want me to read other cartoonists' comics and then tell you how I feel? Yoshida first showed a look of realization on his face, and then quickly he switched to a look of disdain and contempt. Hey, Cheng, as the editor-in-chief of the weekly magazine, in addition to the comics of the cartoonists you are responsible for, you must also read every comic serialized in the weekly magazine. Don't you know this? Oh, my beloved cat, you are so confident, are you really a man? Takahashi Makoto showed a smile that made Yoshida uneasy. In that case, how about we try it? Try what? The more intense Takahashi Makoto's smile, the more uneasy Yoshida became, but at this point, Yoshida could only bluff and confront head-on. In the comic Hikaru no Go by the Good Friend group of Yashiro Mumanjai, when Xiaoguang played against Xiao Liang in the Go Club, Xiaoguang did not follow Sai's instructions, but chose to make moves according to his own will. Do you still remember the part of the plot where Xiaoguang chose to make moves according to his own will? Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida with a smile, and before the other party could speak, he asked a question that made Yoshida speechless. Then, my dear cat, here comes the question. Do you remember which row and column on the chessboard Xiaoguang chose to make moves according to his own will? This. Is this mentioned in the comics? Yoshida began to work hard to improve the calculation capacity of his brain, and recalled bitterly. Can't answer it? Then how about changing the question? In the comic JoJo, what is the name of the ship where Qiao Qiao died? By the way, has the name of the ship been mentioned in the comics? In the manga Hero Academy, how many people took the entrance exam for the Hero Academy with Izuku Midoriya? Since this question is relatively simple, my cat, you also need to tell me the number of males and females. Who the hell would remember this? And telling the number of participants is fine, what's the point of telling me the number of males and females? I'm afraid even Eiji Niizuma himself doesn't know the answer to this question. Still can't answer? Then I'll lower the difficulty to the lowest level. Takahashi Makoto sighed helplessly. In Ryako's manga Assassination, how many students belong to Class E of the third year? Well, I remember it seems to be 24 people, no, it should be 25 people, right? Feeling Takahashi Makoto's contemptuous eyes, Yoshida knew that he didn't answer correctly. Tisk, my cat, you can't even answer a question. Takahashi Makoto looked at the silent Yoshida, smacked his lips and shook his head silently. I saw you look so confident before, and I thought you had some real skills, humph. You dare to apply for equal communication with me? Should I say it's ignorance or ignorance? I'm really sorry that I don't know the answers to these questions. Although he apologized, the way Yoshida spoke at this moment, well, it should be a high roar of ancient dragon. That's because your love is not deep enough. However, Takahashi Makoto's voice was louder than Yoshida's, and his tone was even more intense than Yoshida's. Haven't I said it before? Comics are the inherent boundary that belongs exclusively to the cartoonist. If you can't analyze the essence of the inherent boundary, you can't understand the cartoonist's current mentality. If you can't understand the cartoonist's mood and state when completing the comics, it is not only trampling on the fruits of others' labor, but also disrespecting yourself who is regarded as a competitor by the other party. Feel the cartoonist's mentality through the comics. Yoshida whispered, while falling into deep thought. Tisk, you really don't realize this problem. Looking at Yoshida's thoughtful look, Takahashi Makoto curled his lips in disdain. My beloved cat, for the sake of you being the editor-in-chief, the great and mighty, domineering and crazy cartoonist Kuma, this time I will mercifully tell you. I'm really grateful. Yoshida rolled his eyes and said so with resentment. You're welcome, Takahashi Makoto replied as if it was a matter of course, and then began to sigh again. As expected, I am really a devil with deep sins. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 557. My beloved cat, First let's start with the manga Spirit of the Game by the gay friends Ajumu. After Makoto Takahashi randomly pulled out an issue of the weekly Shonen Jump from his desk, he turned the page. When it comes to the serialization of the manga Ghost of the Game, Yoshida begins to analyze the manga by manga artist Ajoki Yumha. My familiar cat, as the editor-in-chief of the weekly, you must have done some research, right? So let's skip the basic part and start directly by explaining to you what I, the crazy cartoonist Phoenix Inferno, has revealed. The inherent barrier has arrived. Chen, please wait. Although he knew that interrupting Takahashi Makoto would be rude and would definitely lead to revenge from a middle-class cartoonist, since it involved matters related to his career and comics, Yoshida said nothing no doubt should be ignored. Before that, I want to clarify what you mean by the basic part. Speaking of my familiar cat, could it be that you dare to apply for equal communication with the great majesty of the Phoenix Academy? Such wanton behavior is not just a mere one, even if you haven't mastered these basic things. You can atone for your sins by committing seppuku. Takahashi Makoto rarely used his vengeful scornful tongue because of Yoshida's interruption, and just took out the magic sword Broken Star from behind the sofa. After shaking it like a demonstration, Yoshida continued the previous topic under the gaze of "I knew it would be like this." The so-called basic part naturally refers to the direction of the comic plot and the design of the comic characters. Things like that, etc. Yeah, of course I understand this. As if sensing Takahashi Makoto's distrustful eyes, Yoshida immediately revealed some information from the editorial side to Takahashi Makoto. After all, the current teacher Mumenha Aho is also in the editorial department. The cartoonists, who are relatively optimistic internally, their comics naturally attract a lot of attention. Of course, Aiken, Unagi Shinzuma seem to be more anticipated than Bihn Mumenjai and the others. Since you said in My Familiar Cat that Ajumu gay friend manga was favored by the editors, then, tell me, what stupid opinions do you ants have? Makoto Takahashi did not. Because of Yoshida's boast, he forgot his original intention, and instead looked at Yoshida with interest, but after seeing the unnatural expression on Yoshida's face, Takahashi Makoto immediately added, "My beloved cat, feel free to speak boldly, come out. Since you humans rarely want to please me, I will make an exception this time and forgive you." Searched Can on Google. Tisk, Aiken, your attitude is really... Yoshida complained helplessly and then went directly to the topic. Where is Aiken Mumenjai's Soul of the Game? According to the discussion among everyone in the editorial department, this comic is a comic with great potential. Is it very potential? Makoto Takahashi nodded in approval of Yoshida's words. Well, I originally thought that most of the editors were just idlers. It seems that there are also people with long-term vision among the editors. So communicating with a middle-level cartoonist is not a simple and easy task at all. Let a young man who doesn't like Go at all, under the guidance of a soul who deeply loves Go, gradually like Go, and even enter the professional Go circle in the future. I tried my best to ignore Takahashi Makoto's editorial side group ridicule. Yoshida's expression became serious. Whether it is from the perspective of plot development or the theme of the comic itself, it is very consistent with the theme of the weekly Shonen Jump. Shindo Hikaru has grown from an ignorant naughty kid to, under the help and guidance of Zoe, he gradually grows up. This is probably the main plot of the comic Chess Soul, and it is also what attracts readers to this comic. That's it? Is this the only conclusion that all the editors came to when they gathered together? Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida, who stopped talking. After waiting for a moment, he asked with some confusion, "Waiting for all the editors? The result of the discussion among the members is that this is the level of fighting the five scum? Tisk, I really overestimated your talents." Hey, Chen, you said it lightly. Yoshida couldn't ignore Makoto Takahashi's group ridicule this time. With his arms folded in front of his chest, Yoshida leaned on the sofa and snorted coldly. "In that case, Chen, if you have any suggestions, let's talk about it. Since you have asked sincerely about my beloved cat, I will tell you with great mercy." Makoto Takahashi showed a sarcastic smile on his face, and pulled out a magazine from the weekly magazines piled on the table. He pointed to a certain comic in the Shonen Jump that was released a long time ago and asked Yoshida, "My familiar cat, this comic, you should be relatively familiar with it, right?" "Huh? This manga is," of course. Yoshida brushed off the manga that Takahashi Makoto asked him to observe. Although there was a puzzled look on his face, he said in a disdainful tone, "The manga Dream Eater, this is the comic you serialized in the weekly magazine before, Cheng, and it is also adapted from the real experience of Mr. Aiken Mumenjai." By the way, the reason why Yoshida said that the manga Dream Eater is an adaptation is naturally because of the setting issue of the character of manga artist Shoin Kuma in the manga. Of course, in terms of the degree of bad character, no matter how bad the character is, cartoons are still reality, and the degree of character restoration by a certain second-grade cartoonist is quite high. Then my beloved cat, regarding the good friends of Yashiro and Mumha. Takahashi Makoto interrupted Yoshida without hesitation, with an expectant smile on his face. "Whether it is the comics I created or the real experiences of the good friends in reality, do you think they are similar to the male protagonist Shindo Hikaru in the current comic Hikaru no Go?" Makoto, what do you want to say? Yoshida is just a normal human after all, and naturally can't keep up with the jumping thinking of a certain middle school cartoonist. Is this comparable? Let's not talk about the two professions of comics and Go. The difference between the two industries, whether from the perspective of comics or reality, there is no comparison between Mr. Ahomyumha and Hikaru Shindo, right? Tisk, my cat, this has just begun. Are you already unable to keep up with the pace? Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida with a confused face and shook his head helplessly. Comics are the cartoonist's inherent barrier, that is, to materialize the scenery of his own mind on the manuscript paper. Do you remember what I said before? Of course I remember. Although Yoshida's brain was a little confused at the moment, it did not mean that a certain editor-in-chief had lost his memory. Aiken, you once said that comics are the projection of the cartoonist's inner mind. In the comic Dream Eater, the good friends Ashiro and Mum have been striving for the king of Black Flame, Nizuma Eiji, since they became cartoonists. They want to surpass this reading partner and writing competitor through continuous efforts. Hearing Yoshida repeat what he said before, Takahashi Makoto nodded with satisfaction, and at the same time began to corrode the thoughts of a certain editor in charge, and in real life, the good friend pair of Ashiro and Mum also regard the King of Black Flame as a goal they always want to surpass. Of course, because of the appearance of me, the world observer, the good friend pair of Ashiro and Mum have one more object to surpass. So, is this related to the comic Hikaru no Go? Yoshida looked at Takahashi Makoto in confusion, and after hesitating for a moment, he couldn't help asking. In the manga Hikaru no Go, Ryo Toya is considered a Go genius, right? After all, even Sai, who is a plug-in, recognized Ryo's words. Makoto Takahashi suddenly shifted the topic to the manga Hikaru no Go. Ryo started out as a boy who didn't know Go at all, but with Sai's guidance and help, he began to chase Ryo, and before the debut of the good friends Ajo and Muniha, the newly debuted Black Flame King was praised by the weekly editor as a genius cartoonist. Humph, not only that, Aiken, aren't you also called a evil cartoonist by our editorial department? There is no extraordinary talent, no outstanding talent, but you challenge geniuses, and then pursue or even surpass geniuses as your goal, and work tirelessly for it. Makoto Takahashi said this, with a happy smile on his face. Whether it is the good friends Ajo and Muniha, or the Hikaru in the manga Hikaru no Go, from this point of view alone, isn't the similarity quite high? This, indeed, although I think Makoto Takahashi's statement is a bit weird, but Yoshida couldn't find any rebuttal. In the manga Hikaru no Go, Xiaoguang tried his best to catch up with and surpass Xiao Liang. In real life, Yashiro Mumenjai wanted to catch up, no, even wanted to surpass the Black Flame King and the Great Demon King Hao Nkuma. Takahashi Makoto picked up the weekly magazine that published the manga Hikaru no Go and smiled inexplicably. Integrate your inner obsession into the manga, entrust your own goals to the manga, and turn your own beliefs into the determination of the protagonist of the manga, whether it's Go or manga, although in the performance the form is different, but the essence has not changed. In a sense, Yoshida should have ridiculed Takahashi Makoto's weird idea by saying something like the thoughts of a Chuyunibaku manga artist are indeed different from those of ordinary people. It should have been right to say so, but when the words came to his lips, Yoshida suddenly changed his words and said, "To be able to achieve this level, Yashiro Mumha is really amazing." The reason why Yoshida sighed like this is probably because the legendary soul of the editor-in-chief suddenly awakened, right? Even though we live in different dimensions, whether it's the second dimension in comics or the third dimension in real life, some things are not restricted by their environment, such as determination and will. Takahashi Makoto stared at the weekly magazine of the comic Hikaru no Go in his hand, and sighed again. Ashiro Mumanjai and his good friend were able to break the barriers of the dimension, allowing the comics to resonate with their souls, and allowing the cartoonist and the comics to have such an amazing tacit understanding. So, my beloved cat, can you feel the power of Ashiro Mumanjai's inherent barrier now? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 558. The big brawl unfolded by the cartoonists this time is very interesting. On the cartoonist side, it seems that everyone is like the good friends of Yashiro Mumanjai, who have integrated their own personality traits, life beliefs, and even so-called dreams into their own cartoons. My cat, don't be in a hurry to deny it. If you don't believe it, you can go and verify it yourself. The above words were specially reminded to Yoshida by Takahashi Makoto with kindness and goodwill. Yoshida, who was eroded by the thoughts of a certain middle school cartoonist, spent his time observing the cartoons of other people on the cartoonist side in addition to collecting comic manuscripts in the following period of time. Then, it's just like what Aiken said, the manga Hero Academy by Eiji Niizuma is like this. The manga Assassination by Shizukawa is like this. The manga JoJo by Fukuda is actually like this. Even the manga Hunter by Hiromaru is like this. If we have to use a word to express the mentality of the weekly editor Yoshida at this time, perhaps it can only be thinking about it makes you terrified. Regarding Makoto Takahashi's analysis of Yagi Mumha's good friend and his manga, at the beginning, Yoshida just thought that a certain Chuyunibaku cartoonist was just like usual, and didn't take it seriously, but it must be admitted that Makoto Takahashi's nonsense that sounded like a serious matter actually affected the thinking of a certain editor. Tisk, I actually verified it according to what Aiken said. Is my brain going crazy? Putting down the comic manuscript in his hand, Yoshida curled his lips in frustration, thinking back to the advice of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist before, and then reflecting on his actions just now, he complained to himself helplessly, no, maybe all this is because of too much contact with Aiken. But the theories that Aiken said seemed to make sense. Looking through the weekly magazine in his hand again, Yoshida sighed helplessly. At least the comics mentioned by Aiken seem to be like this. No, 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 this is definitely an illusion, coincidence. Everything is accidental. As if to convince himself, Yoshida put down the weekly magazine and muttered to himself like a possessed man, Aiken and the others usually have a good relationship, so all this is a coincidence. Aiken must have known about this situation a long time ago. Otherwise, how could it be like what Aiken said? Watching Yoshida sometimes pick up the weekly magazine and sigh in a low voice, and sometimes put down the weekly magazine and try his best to deny something, the editors who stayed in the office of the weekly editorial side couldn't help but shake their heads. Speaking of Yoshida, if there is no one around in the office, complaining about yourself, isn't this your own problem? Mr. Yoshida, are you okay? Seeing Yoshida's possessed behavior, Yujiro, the editor-in-chief who read him as an ally and a rival, finally couldn't help but ask Yoshida, "You've been mumbling since the beginning, by the way, what happened to Mr. Hao Winkuma?" Hao Winkuma, who has serialized many popular comics and is considered a popular weekly cartoonist, has a reputation among editors similar to Zhang Wenyuan's children dare not cry at night when hearing the name of Zhang Liao. Therefore, whenever the editors on the editorial side saw Yoshida sighing, they could guess that this must be a certain Chuyuni cartoonist who did something that would make people jealous and hate him. Regarding the relationship between cartoonists and comics, Yujiro, what do you think? Yujiro is just a responsible editor, not a certain Yuan Fang, so Yoshida, you asked Yujiro questions without any reason, what do you want him to answer? The relationship between manga and manga artist. Yujiro looked at Yoshida blankly. After a moment of silence, he answered uncertainly, manga is created and completed by manga artists. If we have to describe the relationship between the two, it should be the relationship between creator and work, right? Of course I know this simple truth. Manga is created by manga artists, so the relationship between the two is the relationship between creator and work. This is simply the fact. Yoshida looked at Yujiro with the eyes of caring for the mentally retarded, and activated the editor-only ability Poison Tongue. Speaking of which, Yujiro, your understanding ability is really superficial. As expected, with your level of wisdom, it is difficult to understand such a profound problem. Sorry, it's my fault. I overestimated your IQ, Yujiro. Hey, Yoshida-san, it's easy to lose friends if you talk like this. He went to help with good intentions, but the result was a sharp mockery. If he hadn't considered the bad influence in the office, Yujiro would have, cough cough. Looking at Yoshida with a frown on his face, Yujiro, out of curiosity, couldn't help but ask his own doubts. Speaking of which, Yoshida-san, I'm now very curious about what happened to you before. Actually, I'm also very curious, hee. This kind of sarcastic laughter came from the unicorn-headed editor Hattori, who was watching silently, so, driven by curiosity, the editor-in-chief of Yashiro Mumenjai also intervened in the conversation. Although Yoshida once again recalled the fear of being dominated by a certain middle-class cartoonist when he told his colleagues on the editorial side, he had to admit that the serious nonsense of a certain middle-class cartoonist was indeed fatal. The attraction, at least after Yoshida briefly related in a few words, the two editors on the editorial side who had just joined the topic also began to doubt their own lives. That's basically the situation. How about it? Looking at the surprised and confused expressions of his two colleagues, Yoshida felt for the first time what the pleasure that Makoto Takahashi often talked about was exactly. Tisk, 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 don't look that unbelievable. If you think what I said is unbelievable, you can go and verify it yourself. Verification? No, I don't think it's necessary at all. Editor Hattori scratched his head, with a helpless smile on his face, and said to Yoshida and Yujiro, although it's a bit unbelievable, it's just like what Mr. Kuma from the Phoenix Academy said that way. Ever since her debut, Ajuma Menha has always regarded Arizuma Ag and Phoenix Academy Kuma-sensei as competitors, and she has been trying hard to surpass them until now, but I really never thought about Aju. The two of them, Mumenjai, actually integrated their beliefs into the comic The Soul of the Game. As a witness to Ajuma Menha's growth from being unknown to being a popular cartoonist today, editor Hattori knows a lot about the pair of good friends, but if Yoshida hadn't mentioned it today, editor Hattori really wouldn't have thought about it. However, the two good friends Ake and Mumenjai actually reflected their beliefs and ideals in the comic Soul of the Game. Fukuda-kun usually has the kind of delinquent boy who starts fighting if they disagree, so. He shook his head silently and tried to erase the dark meeting in his mind where he was bullied by the silver-haired boy. Yujiro tried very hard to focus on transferred to the new wife Eiji. But as for Eiji Shinzuma, he has a character that is afraid of chaos in the world and likes lively occasions. Tisk, What Mr. Kyumane of the Phoenix Academy said is really right. Although Yoshida is bullied by Makoto Takahashi, there is still a little sea otter that Yoshida can play with at will, and Ajumu-menha, a pair of good friends, has a very friendly relationship with the Hattori editor. In this case, it's time to is it better to complain about Ajuku-menha's gay friend, who is an uncle? Or should I complain about Hattori editor, who is a Shota control? So it seems, Yujiro, who was bullied by his two cartoonists, is the most tragic editor on the editorial side of the entire weekly, right? A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 559. Comics are a reflection of the inner landscape of the cartoonist. Even though he thinks Takahashi Makoto's theory is too second year or too weird, Yoshida has to admit that Takahashi Makoto's theory is indeed true based on the current cartoonist's comics. Accidental. Or, coincidence. At the beginning, Yoshida thought so. After all, when Takahashi Makoto used the good friends Aho and Mumanjai as examples, Yoshida felt that everything was just accidental or coincidental. However, is this really a coincidence or accident? After a detailed discussion with several colleagues on the weekly editorial side, Yoshida now began to doubt. Although the name of the comic sounds full of suspense and blood, in the comic Assassination by cartoonist Shizukawa, judging from the current serialized content, the whole comic is not the dark comic that Shizukawa is good at, but the transmitting positive energy type full of redemption and hope themes that Shizukawa is least good at and has never set foot in. Through the practice of assassination again and again, the tentacle-like teacher gradually restored the vitality and energy of the students who were originally lifeless. Through the planning of assassination again and again, the octopus-shaped teacher made the students who had lost confidence and even self-loathing regain the confidence that they had once abandoned because of the ridicule and contempt of the people around them. Through the summary of assassination again and again, the teacher with a sense of humor made the students who were too inferior and even began to doubt their lives face up to their own hearts and talents that others never valued. Through the polishing of assassination again and again, the teacher who was handsome for no more than 5 seconds polished the students who were like unpolished jade to be more dazzling. Although only part of the content has been serialized, several editors on the editorial side have roughly guessed the subsequent development of this comic. The head teacher in the comic who declared that he would blow up the earth redeemed the students who had given up on themselves through this special teaching called assassination, and used the light called hope to dispel the darkness and despair that once occupied the lives and hearts of the students. As Yoshida, who once brought Jinghi River to Takahashi Makoto as an assistant, naturally knows some of Jinghi River's past black history, it should be some of Jinghi River's past that he is unwilling to talk about now. From an assistant to a serialized cartoonist in a weekly magazine, the changes that have taken place in Jinghi River, as one of the witnesses, Yoshida, had not thought too much before, but now, since accepting the brainwashing of a certain middle school cartoonist's thinking full of heresy, Yoshida's worldview, it should be the thinking when looking at the relationship between cartoonists and comics has changed, or it can be said that his vision has been broadened. Can my comics be serialized? Really, can it be serialized? Can such a useless comic that I have completed really be serialized in the famous weekly Shonen Jump? This was the string of questions that the newcomer Jinghi River asked the editor in charge of the weekly editorial side when Jinghi River's short story was highly praised and appreciated by the editor and was told that the comics could be serialized in the weekly magazine. Jinghi River's attitude is not so much a lack of confidence as it is excessive inferiority. At that time, the newcomer named Shizukawa didn't know Takahashi Makoto, the middle school manga artist who always wore a white coat. In the first episode of the manga Assassination, after being assigned to Class E of the 3rd grade, Nagisa Shiata's living environment suddenly changed. She was despised and looked down upon by classmates, teachers, and parents. She was even nailed to the school's pillar of shame and used as a negative example to whip other students in the same school. At that time, Nagisa Shiata, in such an environment, let alone confidence, she didn't even have the qualifications to be inferior. Living in an environment that is not expected by everyone for a long time will not be recognized by the people around you, which will eventually lead to people being gradually alienated, their lives will gradually be surrounded by darkness, and their souls will gradually be eroded by despair. From this point of view, the experiences of Shizukawa Shiota and Nagisa Shiota are somewhat similar. Oh my! Ryoko, you can actually project the darkness and despair in your heart directly onto the manuscript paper through the use of the treasure cartoonist's drawing pen, and even achieve an unprecedented 100% synchronization rate. This amazing talent, Ryoko, you really deserve to be the assistant chosen by my Phoenix Inarkuma. Very good, very good. Ryoko, you must continue to maintain this state, and in this way, the whole world will belong to us sooner or later. Ha 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 ha. This is the daily life of Shizukawa, who became the assistant of a certain Chuyunabaku manga artist Makoto Takahashi after being introduced by Yoshida. To be precise, it should be the shameless boasting of a certain Chuyunabaku manga artist that Shizukawa hears every day after becoming Makoto Takahashi's assistant. Of course, please ignore some declarations such as "I will control the world" by a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. Especially Nagisa-san, you deserve full marks for your natural body movements until you get close to me, and you accurately caught my teacher's flaws, but Nagisa-san, you don't value yourself, and such a student is not qualified to perform assassinations. Come and perform assassinations that you can proudly tell others with a smile. All of you have the power to do this. You are all talented assassins. This is the plot in the comic Assassination, when a certain tentacle teacher performs a pat-the-head killing style sermon after the failure of Shiota Nagisa's suicide-style assassination. Takahashi Makoto approved the comics completed by Shizukawa. Scholar Koro approved the assassination carried out by Shiota Nagisa. Whether it is a comic or an assassination, what really shocked the parties involved in the incident was the joy of being recognized. Just as Takahashi Makoto said before, comics are the cartoonist's inherent boundary, which materializes the scenery of his mind on the manuscript paper. So my cat, according to your analysis. Takahashi Makoto put down his brush and looked at Yoshida, who was posing as "come and show off my ability to see through all the truth." After hesitating for a moment, he asked uncertainly, "In Ryoko's comics, Ryoko projected himself into a student of class 3E, and portrayed my image as Mr. Koro. Isn't it?" Yoshida put on a matter-of-fact look and spread his hands to Takahashi Makoto. "Just like you told me before, Shizukawa put all his emotions, his past, and the changes that happened to him into the comics. According to your previous definition, the comic assassination is probably the cartoonist Shizukawa's inherent boundary, right?" That is to say. Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida in surprise, and said with some disbelief, "In Ryoko's mind, I am a non-human creature similar to the tentacle monster." Hey, Aiken, the point is not this at all. Yoshida immediately put his hand on his forehead, and said with a painful face, "I'm talking about the relationship between you and Shizukawa. For Shizukawa, your position, Aiken, is just like the position of Koro-sensei in Shiota Nagisa's heart. Tisk, it turns out that Ryoko wants to kill me." Yoshida suddenly felt that today he came to Takahashi Makoto to verify his guess. It was indeed Steins Gate. No, it was definitely a wrong choice. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao SD Email. Chapter 560. Chapter 560, Do Humans Need Heroes? Dragon-slaying hero, do you feel that the Demon King is waiting for you? Dragon-slaying hero, do you feel the dissatisfied eyes of the princess coming from behind you? Dragon-slaying hero, do you feel that the hero will eventually die by a tragic fate? Makoto Takahashi usually calls himself the Demon King, but after having a conversation with Yoshida about Shizukawa's inherent barrier, Makoto Takahashi took it upon himself to change the title of the manga artist Shizukawa to the Brave Man Ryoko. So listening to Makoto Takahashi singing an unknown ditty while completing the manga manuscript at a hand speed beyond human common sense, Yashida's eyes were quite strange. Is this because Makoto Takahashi was raising a flag on his own, hoping that Shizukawa-san would attack him soon? Taking time out to come to Makoto Takahashi every week to collect manga manuscripts and chatting with a middle school manga artist is a normal daily routine for Yashida. Of course, Yashida actually tried to resist at first when he was manipulated by a certain middle-class cartoonist in various ways, but now, ahem, I have to say that humans are really a highly adaptable species. Today is not the day to receive manga manuscripts, so Yashida should not and does not want to appear within the scope of Makoto Takahashi's realization, but as the editor-in-chief of a cartoonist, when I heard Makoto Takahashi say my manga encounter when summoned as a medium for a completely unscientific reason such as a super big problem, Yashida rushed here almost immediately. On the way here, Yashida has been thinking, is this really a problem with Makoto Takahashi's comics, or is it a certain second-level cartoonist who has developed a new way to tease himself? Of course, Yashida looks at it based on years of experience. From the bottom of my heart, I have determined that this unexpected summons visual inspection is leaning toward the latter. I mean Cheng. Seeing Makoto Takahashi minding his own work on the manga, with no intention of interfering with his own intentions, Yashida hesitated and struggled for a long time, and finally couldn't help but ask, "What did you do before, what I said on the phone?" "Hey, my beloved cat, first of all I have to confirm one thing." Makoto Takahashi rarely put down his brush in the middle of completing the manga draft. After hesitating for a moment, he shook his head slightly. "How about forget it? I'm worried that I will destroy you, my beloved cat." "Speaking of which, Cheng, how serious is the matter you want to confirm?" Yashida looked at Makoto Takahashi in surprise, his tone filled with guilt for no reason. "It shouldn't be that exaggerated, right?" "Actually." Makoto Takahashi hesitated again and looked at Yashida with some hesitation. "Speaking of my companion cat, what are some of my next words? Will you treat me as a person after listening to it? Are you going to carry out a crusade against a heretic or outer law existence? Although fighting against the five scum like you has no impact on me at all, but I am afraid of the trouble of dumping the body or something." "Hey, the last sentence is redundant," Yashida decisively interrupted Takahashi Makoto's words by complaining, and looked at Takahashi Makoto with a resentful expression. "Okay, first of all, I'm here today because Cheng, you talked about comics. Something went wrong, so, I won't discuss any topics that have nothing to do with comics. Actually, it's about the comic One Punch Man." "Wait a minute, Cheng. Are you talking about the comic One Punch Man? What exactly happened?" Yashida looked at Makoto Takahashi in disbelief, and after a moment of hesitation, he guessed, "Could it be? It won't be as I feared before, Cheng, you won't be able to control the next plot, right?" Although a certain middle-class cartoonist was criticized by readers because of the Jinghe River incident, after this momentum passed, several comics serialized by Makoto Takahashi gradually stabilized their position. Even the comic One Punch Man, which worried everyone on the editorial side, has gradually stabilized its position in the top 5. Every time a villain appears on the scene, he always destroys and kills with all his strength, and then easily defeats a group of heroes who come to the rescue, and is finally killed by the bald Saitama teacher with a punch. Previously, Yashida, the responsible editor, once told Takahashi Makoto that the longer the plot mode of the comic One Punch Man is serialized, the easier it is for readers to suffer from aesthetic fatigue, and for comics for readers, this kind of routine plot is also very difficult to master. So after hearing Makoto Takahashi say that there was a problem with the comic One Punch Man, Yashida, who had gradually let go of his worries, instantly felt bad. Could it be that, Makoto Takahashi has begun to lose control of the plot rhythm of this comic? "I said my beloved is a cat. What's going on with that confused and responsible look on your face? Are you thinking about something strange? Makoto Takahashi did not frantically use mind-reading technique on Yoshida this time. This kind of ability, but after just glancing at Yoshida, he sighed with a little melancholy. The real problem in the comic One Punch Man is not the ones you are worried about in My Familiar Cat, but, the essence is, or at the root. Essence. Origin. The corners of Yoshida's mouth twitched, listening to Makoto Takahashi's melancholy tone. Yoshida was certain that the conversation that followed would begin to deviate in a strange direction. Hey, my beloved cat, I want to confirm something for you. Makoto Takahashi put his hands on his chin and looked at Yoshida seriously. Do humans need heroes? Yoshida was stunned. What on earth is this topic? It's about defeating the evil dragon and saving the princess, or defeating the evil demon king and saving humanity, or helping the weak and saving the world. That's probably what a hero is, right? Takahashi Makoto seemed to be talking to himself, and seemed to be explaining to Yoshida again, but do humans really need heroes? Let's not talk about whether we need them or not. Although he couldn't understand why Takahashi Makoto suddenly thought of saying this, out of the professional ethics of the editor in charge, Yoshida still tried his best to change the subject. By the way, this has nothing to do with the comic One Punch Man, huh? It's not that he failed to change the subject, but that Yoshida suddenly realized the key to the problem. Because the comic One Punch Man is based on the character of hero, so the question raised by Takahashi Makoto about do humans need heroes, is really unrelated to the comic One Punch Man? Humans should need heroes. Yoshida, who couldn't convince himself to use the topic change skill again, had no choice but to answer Takahashi Makoto's question like this. Is that the answer? Just as superficial as expected. Takahashi Makoto narrowed his eyes and looked at Yoshida after hearing Yoshida's answer, but humans are really complicated creatures. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 561. Regarding the question raised by Makoto Takahashi, does mankind need heroes, Yoshida gave an affirmative answer. Although Takahashi Makoto didn't say it explicitly, Yoshida could tell that Takahashi Makoto was quite dissatisfied with his answer, even the contempt in his eyes was so undisguised. However, Makoto Takahashi did not explain too much, and even the taunt that could cause Yoshida critical damage in the past did not appear. Makoto Takahashi didn't even say a word, but just stuffed a thick stack of manga manuscripts into it. In Yoshida's hands. Is this the manga manuscript of the latest chapter of the comic One Punch Man? Yoshida looked at the manga manuscript in his hand, and then looked at the playful expression on Makoto Takahashi's face, and instantly understood a certain middle-class cartoonist idea. The answer lies in the manga manuscript of this episode. A huge meteorite is about to fall to the earth. This is the beginning of the comic One Punch Man written by Yoshida. Should this be a gift from the universe, or should it be said to be a reversal impulse from the world consciousness that wants to destroy mankind? When the Heroes Association observed the meteorite and deduced the location of its fall, it had already begun arranging to evacuate the residents living at the destination where the meteorite fell. Although the evacuation order had been issued, no matter whether it was the humans fleeing in panic in the city, several observers in the Hero Association have actually understood that it is too late now. The place where the huge meteorite fell was City Z, where Saitama-sensei lived. Even though the Heroes Association has issued an order to summon heroes, it is expected that the super beings as heroes can destroy. No, it is even just expected that the heroes can slightly block the falling of the meteorite and buy more time for the humans who are escaping. But at this point in time, when City Z is about to be destroyed, which hero can stand up at this critical moment to resist this natural disaster that is impossible for humans to resist? In other words, who the hell would be stupid enough to stay when they know that they are going to die? As the time for the meteorite to fall became shorter and shorter, the humans who were escaping in a hurry gradually fell into despair. After all, anyone with a little common sense knows that after the meteorite falls, the powerful impact will destroy Z City in an instant, and at the same time, the impact of the meteorite on City Z will even destroy several nearby cities. Despair began to spread among humans. Countless humans who found that there was no escape began to pray silently, hoping that at this moment, a hero would appear to reverse the crisis, a hero who would appear at such a critical moment and complete the task in a way that turned the tide. Shooting down falling meteorites, this impossible task creates an existence called miracle. And the so-called heroes, aren't they the ones who stand up at critical moments, crush despair, and bring hope? Genos-san, who had just obtained, no, should be said to have just upgraded his new equipment, did not ignore the summons of the Heroes Association like other heroes, but rushed to the place where the meteorite was about to land as soon as possible. City Z. There are 3 heroes who appear at the same time as Genos, and they are all S-level beings in the Heroes Association. However, it is a pity that even the 3 top S-level combat heroes who belong to the Heroes Association still cannot prevent the meteorite from falling. After Metal Knight controlled the robot to bombard the meteorite with missiles, he found that the meteorite could not be destroyed and quickly left the scene. Although Mr. Bangu, the soy sauce Silver Fang, has the ability to protect himself, he is also unable to prevent the meteorite from falling. And Genos-san, after seeing his 2 colleagues give up, he did not feel discouraged, but instead made a last-ditch effort. An energy beam similar to the signature move Turtle-style Kigong in the comic Dragon Ball was emitted from Genos' hand, aiming directly at the huge meteorite falling from the sky. I will use this blow now and give all my strength. Screaming at the top of your lungs, exerting all your energy to output, in order not to crush the meteorite, but at least to delay the time a little. However, even if the scene created by Genos is quite exaggerated, in the face of this natural disaster, it can still only be regarded as a desperate struggle of mankind. Genos, who exhausted his energy, could not even destroy the meteorite, let alone delay it. The falling time didn't do it either. There are still 9 seconds, please run away, Mr. Bangu, faced with his own powerlessness and impending despair, while Genos resigned as if giving up, he also did not forget to remind him that he had been playing soy sauce just now. Another hero of "Old man, I'll leave this guy to you." Just when Genos was desperate, a bald man wearing a weird uniform suddenly appeared. "You, who are you?" "I am a interest-driven hero." As the words fell, Teacher Saitama half bent down, and after briefly accumulating strength, he suddenly jumped upwards, and on the roof of the house that was used as a lever, a large area of turtles appeared at the moment Teacher Saitama jumped. Crack marks. Don't fall. Teacher Saitama, who was flying towards the meteorite, raised his right fist, stared at the huge meteorite, and roared with gritted teeth, "My city." Then, just like the plot routine after Mr. Saitama's appearance, the huge meteorite was shattered with one punch, forming a bald Saitama Special Edition meteor shower over Z City, which was originally going to be destroyed. Of course, the fragments of the meteorite shattered by Saitama still brought a catastrophic blow to Z City. Although I had guessed the development of the plot before, when I actually watched it, I found it was more exciting than I could imagine. Yoshida, who was still savoring the power of Saitama's punch just now, was about to continue reading the comic manuscript when he found that Takahashi Makoto stretched out his hand to press the comic manuscript, so Yoshida, who was anxious to continue observing the comic manuscript, couldn't help but ask, "By the way, Cheng, what are you doing? Don't stop me from continuing to read it." "Tisk, it seems that my cat has not completed the task assigned to you before." Looking at Yoshida's bewildered look, Takahashi Makoto curled his lips unhappily and complained with a frown, "If you have already read the comic manuscript of the original version, you should have known the next plot." Sorry, Makoto, Yoshida did not finish reading the previous magical original version, so the moment Takahashi Makoto exposed him, a certain editor apologized very sincerely, even if he could find 100 excuses to deny it. Yoshida also felt that a certain middle school cartoonist probably had 101 ways to make him admit it, so at this time, he might as well apologize sincerely. Tisk, is this the attitude of a sincere apology? Go and commit seppuku 1,000,000 times, my dear cat, but even if he apologized sincerely, Takahashi Makoto's attitude today was as bad as ever. Seppuku, 1,000,000 times. Hey, people will die if they seppuku once. After Yoshida complained weakly, a flattering smile appeared on his face, and he said embarrassedly, speaking of which, Chen, let's discuss other things later. How about letting me finish reading the comic draft of this episode first? My beloved cat, before that. Takahashi Makoto retracted his hand that was pressing on the comic draft and asked Yoshida the same question again, do humans need heroes? Of course, looking at the comic draft in his hand, Yoshida was much more confident when answering this time. It is precisely because of heroes like Genos and Saitama that the humans in Z City can avoid the fate of being destroyed by meteorites. Speaking of which, Chen, your own comics have already given a good answer, why do you have to confirm with me again and again? By the way, you are not planning something again, are you? I really don't have a plan this time, I just have expectations for some interesting things, that's all. Takahashi Makoto narrowed his eyes and looked at Yoshida, saying so. Another endless loop of answers like interesting things /U0026 no plans. Yoshida, who was already familiar with the routine of a certain Chuyunibu manga artist, frowned at Takahashi Makoto, and wisely did not ask Takahashi Makoto stupid questions like what do you mean by interesting things? My beloved cat, even if you don't believe me, you should believe in you who believe in me. Takahashi Makoto deliberately used this tongue-twisting answer to interfere with Yoshida's thinking. Anyway, I'm just looking forward to it. By the way, what are you looking forward to, Makoto? Yoshida began to feel a little scared. I always felt that once Takahashi Makoto looked at me with a weird smile, it would be the time for me to be tricked. Well, I'm looking forward to what kind of expression you will show after reading this chapter of the comic manuscript. If you reveal a little information, it's probably like this, Takahashi Makoto said with narrowed eyes. The comic manuscript of this chapter, Yoshida suddenly felt that I think I'm going to be fooled again. Hey, my beloved cat, keep going. Weren't you eager to observe the comic manuscript before? Seeing Yoshida start to hesitate, a middle school manga artist began to instigate, your hesitant attitude, as the editor-in-chief, my soul is crying. Hey, keep observing. Hurry up. This time it will definitely not be an illusion. Yoshida can pat his chest and touch his conscience to guarantee that the remaining comic manuscripts in his hands that have not been finished will definitely have pitfalls. This strong sense of déjà vu of an instigator, what a pity, as if possessed by a certain Kamijo boy, Yoshida sighed helplessly, frowned, picked up the comic in his hand, and continued to observe the rest of the content. My beloved cat, after reading the rest of the comic, will you still be able to stick to your original intention, insist on the answer that humanity needs heroes? Or, will you fall into a vortex of contradictions and entanglements from now on, and spend the rest of your life struggling and wandering in the cruelty and darkness called reality? Persist in hope or step into despair. My beloved cat, your choice is the interesting thing that I really look forward to. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 562. Although City Z was not directly destroyed by the meteorite, the fragments of the meteorite shattered by teacher Saitama left the ground devastated. Originally, it should be a matter of celebration that the city avoided such a natural disaster, but Yoshida failed to feel a trace of joy from Genos' inner monologue in the comic manuscript, and instead felt a bit more dignified. The next plot. Yashida looked up at Makoto Takahashi, who was full of expectation over there, and swallowed with some difficulty. Could it be Ji Yuxiang again, right? Yashida once asked Makoto Takahashi why several comics serialized by cartoonist Hohoin Kuma are accompanied by depressive content. Of course, joy must be accompanied by depression. The purpose of this is to prevent human beings in joy from forgetting sadness. When giving people hope, they also do not forget to give corresponding despair. This level of equivalent exchange, hey, this is a truth that is common to all worlds. This is Makoto Takahashi's answer. It also belongs to the unique style of manga artist Shoin Hashizoma. Now that he has guessed that the next plot will lead to depression, Yashida, as the editor-in-chief, will naturally be mentally prepared in advance. In the face of upcoming misfortunes, human beings will always think that they have taken proper precautions. However, unfortunately, this naive idea is just human arrogance. Therefore, Yashida, who thought he was mentally prepared, arrogantly began to observe the remaining comic manuscripts of the comic One Punch Man, and then Yashida showed the look that Makoto Takahashi expected. Well, it was the twisted look that made Makoto Takahashi's soul feel pleased. Teacher Saitama, who smashed the meteorite and saved City Z, was not greeted with flowers and applause. Instead, under the deliberate instigation of some villains, he suffered slander, resistance, rejection, and resentment. But it's all because of you that my new car. He obviously saved the human beings in the city, but now he has become the criminal responsible for the destruction of the city. It's all because of you that my house was. It was clear that the meteorite was shattered, but the distorted human beings repeatedly questioned and criticized. Because of your hasty behavior, my supermarket. He should have been treated like a hero, but now he was questioned like a sinner. Looking at the manga manuscript, Mr. Saitama, instigated by a group of villains, was surrounded by more and more humans to criticize and question. Although he was just an observer of the manga manuscript, at this moment, Yashida felt something in his heart. A kind of helplessness and anger that cannot be vented. Faced with the accusations of those onlookers whose human nature has been distorted, Teacher Saitama did not retreat or escape, nor did he go dark and destroy all living things to take revenge. Instead, he argued loudly with the people around him like a child quarreling. What a mouthful! Shut up! I don't care what losses you suffer. Go talk to the meteorite like that, you stupid ass. Listen, I didn't become a hero just to get your praise, it was because I wanted to be one. Hate all you want, you bald heads. But is this really an argument? Looking at Mr. Saitama's declaration in the manga, Yashida somehow suddenly remembered the sentence that Mr. Saitama often said. I am a hero driven by interest. When he first saw this sentence, Yashida thought it was quite funny and quite unserious. After all, it would be too out of place to engage in a high-risk profession like hero just because of interest, right? Or maybe, Saitama-sensei's ideas are too naive and childish, right? But when he saw this, Yashida realized that he was the one who was truly innocent and childish. Whether it's killing monsters or smashing meteorites, it's all out of interest. It's not to protect anyone, nor to get any praise or praise. All actions are out of one's own interest. After gaining nearly invincibility, after the battle, Saitama-sensei has not forgotten his original intention. I remember, I just want to be a hero who can beat you bad guys with one punch. Recalling what Saitama-sensei said to the crab monster who wanted to kill the children in the previous serial content when he was not bald and had no strong fighting ability, Yashida suddenly felt that maybe the reason why Saitama-sensei was truly powerful was not that. It sounds like an exercise method that ordinary people can do, but it's because of such a mentality that you can gain that invincible power. This is probably what is called don't forget your original intention, and you will always succeed. Hey, I have finished reading the manga manuscript. Makoto Takahashi sat on the desk and interrupted Yashida, who was still thinking. Then you can answer me now. Do humans need heroes? Of course, if you haven't read the content of this chapter, or to be precise, if you haven't read the second half of this chapter, Yoshida will definitely answer this without hesitation. But now, after seeing what happened to teacher Saitama, Yoshida can't say such words. Oh, my familiar cat, your current expression is really a masterpiece. Makoto Takahashi, who was even worse than the onlookers in the comics, looked at Yoshida's aggrieved expression and let out a cry of pleasure praise. Seeing the look on your face, my familiar cat, I'm already looking forward to the reader's reaction after this chapter is published. Although there is no problem with the style of painting, the plot of this episode. Ignoring the evil taste of a certain second-year manga artist, Yoshida couldn't help but ask Takahashi Makoto after pondering for a moment. Attacking, of course, only the editor-in-charge knows whether there is any intention to change the topic intentionally. Past, right? It's really unexpected. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with some surprise, and said with disgust in a disgusting tone, I didn't expect that you, my companion cat, can't even bear this level. Hey, you're not pretending to be my beloved cat, are you? Stop joking, Cheng. I'm discussing the plot of the comic with you now. Although he tried his best not to use the roar skill on a certain second-grade cartoonist, Yoshida was really a little angry at the moment. As for being angry, the reason is more or less due to the influence of this chapter of the comic One Punch Man, right? There's nothing wrong with the first half of the sentence, but there are some. The second half of the plot is very realistic and cruel, right? After completing what Yoshida had not finished, Takahashi Makoto also restrained his smile and shook his head slightly. But my dependent cat, you don't want to. I forgot that the world that humans live in today is originally like this. No, it's not the same, it's not the same. Even though he subconsciously refuted Takahashi Makoto's words, but is Yoshida's unconfident tone really a refutation, or a different kind of self-comfort? What about deception? Heroes who save mankind receive not praise but blame, doctors who rescue patients suffering from sudden illness receive not thanks but complaints, judges who judge criminals receive not praise but abuse, originally well-intentioned pedestrians who help others with good intentions are not grateful but questioned. A disdainful smile appeared on Takahashi Makoto's face, and he tapped the table with his fingers. Hey, my familiar cat, what happened to teacher Saitama in the manga? It comes from the cruel reality we live in. I know, but the reason why you can't accept the plot of the comic is because your soul is stung, or it comes from conscience and moral guilt. After all, you also live in this cruel world. In real society, Makoto Takahashi jumped down from the table, walked to Yoshida, and picked up the manga manuscript lying aside. So for a hero, the best ending is not to defeat the evil devil, but to defeat the evil devil. It is to die together with the other party. In other words, do humans still need heroes? Of course it is necessary. But, sacrifice is the fate of a hero. Makoto Takahashi was sorting out the manga manuscript while using serious nonsense to corrode Yoshida's thoughts. After all, heroes live in human memory. To mankind, he is a hero. Sacrifice. Now, my beloved cat, do you know why it is said that sacrifice is the fate of a hero? Makoto Takahashi's tone became a little deeper, because the so-called hero has bloomed his own glory. After that, you must die. Human beings, such twisted creatures, exude the rotten stench called jealousy from the depths of their souls. They cannot tolerate beings who are better than themselves, nor can they tolerate the objects of their admiration and worship. There is no room for a being who can be praised and praised by mankind as a hero. Hey, Chen, don't smear humanity with just a few points. Yoshida seemed to have escaped the ideological erosion of a certain secondary comic. If it's true as you said, then, does humanity still need heroes? Of course. Makoto Takahashi quickly flipped through the manga manuscript, pulled out the conversation between Genos and Mr. Saitama after the disaster, and spread it out in front of Yoshida. As Mr. Saitama said, even the heroes run away, who will fight? Knowing that this is the fallacy of a middle-class cartoonist, Yoshida now feels helpless and speechless. Is it an illusion? My familiar cat, do you feel conflicted? In fact, it goes without saying, Makoto Takahashi put the compiled manga manuscript into Yoshida's hand, pulled the white coat on his body, and said righteously, in longing for a hero at the same time, I am also deeply afraid of the existence of heroes. As I said to you before, humans are such creatures. No further analysis is needed. Now Yoshida understands why Takahashi Makoto said that human beings are complex and contradictory creatures. Because for humans, the existence called hero, while being admired and worshipped by humans, he is also hated and rejected by humans.